Welcome to ScreenCrush, I'm Ryloth, and this is all of the Easter eggs, references, and little things that you might have missed in The Bad Batch, Episode 11. This episode is called Devil's Deal, referring to the deal that Ryloth has made with the Empire. Never a good idea.
This deal is getting worse all the time.
Ryloth is the home planet of the Twi'leks, like Bib Fortuna in Return of the Jedi.
Ne jobber no bother.
Now, this planet has actually been the setting of some major storylines in the Clone Wars and Star Wars Rebels, and also some of the best episodes in both series. This episode is a bridge between the two. So, I'm going to briefly recap the history of Ryloth in both those series, and how it connects to this episode. During the Clone Wars, Ryloth was invaded by the Separatists. There was a great three-part arc where the Jedi and the Clone Troopers had to get past the blockade, and then meet up with Cham Syndulla to help his resistance. Now, in this episode, Cham is trying to make peace with the Empire, but in the Clone Wars, he was very reluctant to accept help from the Republic.
I've come for your help.
What makes you think you'll get it?
He wanted Ryloth to be totally independent, but the clones and Jedi earned his trust by the end of the war.
I trust them to protect us as they always have.
You know, episodes of the Clone Wars always had like an ominous feeling because we knew the Republic was going to turn bad. In this episode, we see the chickens come home to roost. This episode also features the great Phil LaMarr as Senator Ta. Now, this spineless a-hole first appeared in the background of Attack of the Clones, but was often used in the Clone Wars to exemplify the corrupt, bloated government of the Senate. Now, in that Clone Wars run I just mentioned before, he feared Cam's popularity, and it's nice to see that thread continued right here. Notice the tattoo on Cam's Leku, that's his head tendril. This is a symbol of his house. Now, it's similar to the artwork on his wife's Kalikori, a sacred Twi'lek heirloom that we saw in Rebels.
It honors all who have come before.
Each parent adds to the artwork to include themselves in the legacy.
Cam's right-hand man, Gobi, also appeared in that original Clone Wars run. So Cam's daughter, Hera, is a main character in Star Wars Rebels, where she leads the small rebel cell that show focuses on. By then, she's already the great pilot that she dreams of becoming in this episode.
So you're a pilot?
No, not yet. But one day.
Hera also got a small shout out in Rogue One. Now, her droid Chopper is also a character in Rebels. Oddly enough, when Cham Syndulla appears in Rebels, he remembers Chop from her childhood.
Is that the old astromech you found during the Clone War?
So, in Rebels, Hera and her dad are no longer on speaking terms. Her mother died in the Ryloth resistance that began in this episode, and Cham resented Hera for fighting the Empire on other planets instead of focusing on Ryloth. Notice that she's even dropped her accent when she leaves the planet.
We haven't spoken in years.
Now, in Rebels, there's a very heartfelt moment where she actually reconnected with her father while speaking in her original Ryloth accent.
This is different. The rebels are fighting to free everyone.
It was really cool to see her in this episode dreaming of leaving the planet, of flying. That moment where she imagines herself as a ship in the sky is cut short by the stormtroopers, reminding her that she's essentially imprisoned on the ground. Now, her musical theme in this episode is actually the very beginning of her theme in Star Wars Rebels.
I thought I needed it to keep my mother's memory alive, but I have you. I have my father.
Which, you'll notice, also has a touch of Leia's theme mixed in. This is showing that we are just at the beginning of Hera's story and her life is still being written. The episode also lays the groundwork for her rebellious nature, and gives her a reason to hate the Empire. They stole her parents. When she looks through her goggles, the Arabesh letters here read scanning. Now, the Empire is setting up a Dunium mine. This is the super strong metal they use to build starships that's featured heavily in Timothy Zahn's novel, Thrawn. Crosshair is stationed on Ryloth, finally giving us a glimpse of his life apart from hunting the Bad Batch. And I want to take a moment to shout out the structure of this episode. I really like that the focus was taken away from the Bad Batch, and they were just minor players in someone else's story, kind of like the guy in High Maintenance.
Like we were in a dream or something, right? Bless you.
Clone Wars featured several characters from episode to episode, while Rebels always focused on one cell. Personally, I always preferred the Clone Wars. I like seeing what was happening around the galaxy, and I hope this show continues to blend these two structures. So, when Hera talks to Omega about flying, she says,
Flying it's about a feeling.
And this idea of a feeling seems to really connect with Omega. Now remember, this is similar to how Finn described his force sensitivity in The Rise of Skywalker.
How do you know?
A feeling.
Now this is again a little clue that there is something else to Omega. She's most likely Force sensitive or has some hidden ability. Crosshair, who is a great heel, arranges for their arrest.
These three were caught smuggling weapons onto the planet.
The Stormtroopers land in a Republic transport that hasn't been replaced by Imperial technology. Now later, we'll see that the Imperials are still riding Republic speeders that we saw in Clone Wars. Hera is imprisoned in an HCV-AW turbo tank, just like the one Jyn Erso was transported in Rogue One. We also saw a similar tank used in Mandalorian Season 2. Meanwhile, Cham is riding a Blurg, an animal we first glimpsed at in an Ewok TV movie, which appeared in that Ryloth Clone Wars run, but are most famous from The Mandalorian. The episode ends with Admiral Rampart setting up Cham for the attempted assassination of Senator Ta. Now you'll remember that Rampart is the Imperial who's been popping up in the show since episode 2.
For Imperial credits, thanks to the generosity of the new Galactic Empire.
I really loved this episode. The Bad Batch is meant to serve as a bridge between the two trilogies, and this episode does that perfectly. When we met Cham Syndulla, his arc was about learning to trust the Republic.
Do you know why we were massacred, Master Jedi? When the droids swept over Ryloth, the Republic was unable to help us.
And then we meet him in Rebels. He's jaded and doesn't trust anyone, not even his own daughter.
We are not going anywhere.
You're too late, Father. Chopper, make the jump to hyperspace.
It's very cool to see that transition and get an origin story for Hera as well. I hope the show keeps doing that. I want to see Saul Guerrero, for instance, showing how he went from being a jaded partisan to the ruthless killing machine that we met in Rogue One. What other characters would you like to see bridged in this series? Let me know in the comments below or at me on Twitter. And if it's your first time here, please subscribe. For ScreenCrush, I'm Ryan Airy.